In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on past life lessons to learn and grow from them, and to take things to the next level in helping others who are struggling through dark times. I am quite thrilled for today's chat, and I'm equally thrilled to introduce our special guest to you. There are times in our lives where we drift into uncharted waters. In a word, uncertainty. Whether intended or not, this can be an unsettling feeling. We can become overwhelmed with anxiety, fear, for we don't know what lies before us around the corner, right? Much less how will we respond to these uncertain events that we don't know anything about. My special guest has truly lived this. First, living in Israel, born and raised, and serving in the Israeli Navy, coaching leaders, proficiently immersed in her profession and homeland. Then she encounters a relocation experience, bringing her to the United States, knowing this is a big change, but unsure of what the change is going to look like. A myriad of unknowns lay before her. I'm sure a ton of questions as well. How will I interact with people here? Will I learn the language, the behaviors of this unfamiliar place? And so much more, so much more. She has an incredible journey that she's going to share with us. She's a coach, public speaker, and author. She also specializes in relocation and expatriate coaching. I can't wait for her to share her journey with us. Let's welcome Noa Ronen to the show. Hi, Noa. How are you doing?
Hey, I feel like a big star now.
Oh, we are thrilled to have you here today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Aubrey. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Oh,
Really.
thank you. Thank you. Likewise. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. Tell us about life growing up in Israel, and growing up, finding your purpose and how things were for you there.
It's interesting that you're asking about the purpose because it's actually changed, but remind me if I forget about it because sometimes I get into the story and I forget.
Of
Um,
course.
so I think my story starts in the playground. So I remember when I was really young
Mm-hmm.
that I had that forte of knowing that I'm an influencer. When I speak, people follow me. I'm a leader.
Nice.
And that's something that I remember knowing in a very early age, in the playground, kindergarten, that I just have that special gift. And
Yeah.
it followed me everywhere. Sometimes better, sometimes less, but I just knew I had that gift. And so, as you mentioned, going through school, nothing really interesting to say there. And joining the army in Israel, you have to join the army, serve in the army. Women serve for 2 years and men for 3 years. If they are
Mm-hmm.
not officer, then they have to stay longer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the army, I didn't know, but I did somewhat of a coaching role. I was in a job that I needed to teach officers how to have this executive presence. If you think about it, the officer is the one who tells their people after me, and people need to follow them.
Right.
So we had to teach them how to do that. It wasn't our job to stand in front of people, even though we did that once in a while when the officer would say, "Can you do that for me?"
Yeah.
But most of the times it was about teaching them how to stand in front of people. And that
Mm.
was a wonderful experience when you're 18 years old. And having now kids that are approaching this age, I actually kind of sad that they can't experience something like that, because it's a life-changing experience when you leave your house after 18 years, go to the army and learn a different way of living, a different way of a system. But actually, for me, being raised by an army officer,
Mm.
it was the first time I felt freedom. So that was a wonderful experience for me. And afterwards, talking about purpose, so for years I said that I'm going to be an event planner. My creative mind thought that event planning going to be my life-changing experience. And after finishing my MBA, started working in an event planning office and quitted after 2 weeks of sending faxes again and again, and realized this is my wrong dream. So thank you for reminding me that, because I sometimes like to tell that to younger people
Yeah.
when they freak out about what's going to happen with my life. So
Right.
it was my dream for so long, and it took it 2 weeks to realize it's not the right one.
Hey, sometimes we have to go down that path, right? In order to have that realization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I was on the path of really kind of like moving with what I did in the army, training, human resources, and luckily, I was recruited by a wonderful woman to be part of a consultancy agency as a change management consultant. I'm
Great.
not sure what she found in me, but I was very young. I was 23, 24. And she just looked at me. She said, "You're interesting." And she gambled on me. And I learned so much from her, because I had the opportunity to sit in such a young age with CEOs and C-suite executives. And that's when that magic came back, because I would sit in the boardroom and share what I think. And there was that magical quiet silence,
Right. Right.
and then people would follow me. And most of the times, not all the times, but I just knew I had that. So that's Israel, MBA, executive roles. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so that's 2 kids, husband. So that's kind of
Awesome.
like just life, living life.
Awesome. Awesome. No, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. Thank you, Noah, for sharing that. So you knew from an early age that you had this quality, this distinct quality to lead people,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And
That's mhm.
yeah, and my belief was that speaking, my vocabulary, my ability to express myself
Yes.
was what making the difference with my
I
ability to lead.
I see. So your speaking and your vocabulary was fueled, if you will, with emotion, with passion, with inflection,
Yeah,
to the degree where what you say and how you say it resonated with those who heard you.
exactly.
Oh man, that's great. So, in a timeline perspective, let's talk about the role you had with the agency, the consultant agency for change management.
Mhm.
Now, I'm assuming that happened after your service in the Navy.
Yeah, that happened a few years after I was in a human resources role,
Okay.
and then I was recruited to be in that agency.
Yeah.
And we talk now 20 years back in time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was lucky to see what happens when companies invest a lot of money in technologies, the ERPs, workflow, how to take the knowledge from the people and move them into the technology. And
Yeah.
then they would spend millions of dollars. Um, and I'm talking big corporations in Israel.
Hmm.
And we would come and teach everyone to work together. And I'm
Yes.
talking like the people who lead the project, sitting
Right.
together,
Right.
not from the technology space, but from the implementation. How
Yes.
make sure this technology becomes that the users become independent using the technology.
I
And it
see.
was so interesting because it was the time when people were so afraid that they would be replaced by the technology. And
Mm.
it impacted the whole system. So I
Yes.
was very lucky to work with leaders and see their concerns, how they can communicate that with their people, and
Mm.
then how they the people are afraid, and then how all the managers need to learn to work together, and how we bring this whole organization from our perspective, from what we do, to get to the goal, where the CEO says, I put a lot of money, make this happen.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's not easy. And I learned that it's a lot about creating trust with people. But again, I was so lucky in such a young age to be exposed to those people and learn from them to what they pay attention to, what's important, how organizations work,
Yes.
the emotions around, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it was very interesting.
Oh, that's great. And it's so funny how things happen in life sequentially. There are certain events that just kind of, I don't know, lay the groundwork for subsequent events, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very surprising. And here's what I'm getting at, Noah. Um, Change management is very, very serious. It's a much high value add profession. Companies, like you said, spend millions and millions of dollars on change management because, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. You definitely know this, but we're taught that the only thing that is the one thing you can count on that is the constant thing in life is change.
Hmm.
And with change, there's the whole belt curve of, acceptance, rejection, and all that good stuff. So you have to change or help foster or change the mindsets of people in companies when it comes to, like in your case, adapting to technologies, giving them a feeling of reassurance that they are not going to be replaced in their jobs.
Hmm.
And if you don't have the buy-in of the employees and the company, then then the change is not going to work. It won't be adapted, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
we
mhm.
can talk. Yes, sorry, ask the question. Yeah.
Oh no. So I was just going to say that's a lot of education that you're given when your manager gave you that shot, right? You
Yeah.
learned a ton from it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is it fair to say that what you've learned, whether you knew it or not at the time, started to equip you for the next event that would happen in your journey?
So actually not.
Okay, okay. Hey,
Uh,
can't blame a guy for trying.
you knew it's gonna be fun with me. So actually not, because they say,
Okay.
when the doctor becomes the patient. Uh,
Yes.
so that's exactly what happened to me. Today, when I'm smarter, older, less dramatic,
Mhm.
I know how much what I learned then I use now with my clients with coaching.
Exactly.
But I had to go through the vulnerable experience of the relocation and even feel shame
Mm.
and get messy and lost with my change, that I can get to the other side and understand the difference when you lead others through change and when you yourself go through change. And until that day, I didn't understand what does it mean, even though
Yeah.
I got married, I had
Yeah.
kids, I
Yeah.
changed jobs, I
Yep.
was in the army,
Right.
still that I was not prepared for that specific change.
Until it actually happened to you as you were going through it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, okay. I understand now. Thank you. No, I definitely understand. Okay, so that's where the education comes in as you're going through it. And as you said earlier, you've led many people through these types of changes, but how much of a difference between um, leading someone through it and going through it yourself did you pick up on, or did you detect a big difference, slight difference?
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to help people understand what we are talking about, I'm talking about the relocation experience
Yes.
that you mentioned earlier. And so age 30, two little kids, and my husband gets a job opportunity for us to move from Israel to New York City
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years. And now we're 15 years after, but it was for a 2-3 years adventure,
Right.
which I wasn't even sure I wanted to take on, because I just started a new job that was on a career path to be an executive human resources person. So that
Okay.
came kind of like in the worst timing for me. But
Right.
apparently having kids or relocating is never, there is never
There's no
mostly
good time, right?
no good timing there. So we moved to New York City, and it's not like I was naive and I thought that it will take me 2 days and everything gonna be like wham bam.
Yeah.
I knew I need to help the family get roots, and we will need to start together again, and it will be my role while my husband is starting his new job with the same company, but just in New York City.
Right.
And what was interesting is that I couldn't find what I call a real opportunity. I wanted to do what I did in Israel, in
Right.
New York City, and it just didn't work. No one paid attention. No one cared about my MBA from Israel. No one cared about my human resources experience.
Really?
Yeah. And I felt really, really lost because I wanted the same.
Right.
And I got into that internal battle with everyone, and especially with myself,
I
because
see.
I couldn't understand how that woman, you know, change management consultant,
Yeah.
executive, get it done person,
Yeah.
suddenly can't bring results.
Mm.
And that was such a hard experience for me. I remember looking in the mirror, as we say, and saying, you're such a failure. You're such a failure. How come you can do that? And you know, that's when the voice is
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And one of the stories I told myself during that time is that my English is not good enough. Now, you have to understand, in Israel, we use English a lot.
Okay.
We use it in college. Most of the companies today email each other, or the Slack, or everything is in English. So it's not like it's a culture that doesn't understand the European culture, the American culture.
Right.
Israel is very American, okay?
Okay.
But still, it's my second language.
Right.
And then they talk, and I know that that magical silence that was my magic shifts into a new one, people trying to understand me. And when you live that experience, your forte becomes your obstacle. And I felt handicapped.
Oh my. So let's try to paint that picture. I want the listeners to be able to draw a vision in their mind's eye of uh, the emotions you were going through, right? Uh, Self-doubt. You mentioned the hard look in the mirror, thinking or saying you're a failure. What about were there any feelings of anger? And if so, were they directed inward at yourself, or were they projected out? And I don't mean physically projected out like you're yelling at somebody or anything, but just, the target, I guess, of who or what you were angry with. Were there any types of feelings like that you were going through?
Part of it was on my husband.
Okay.
And I think it happens a lot in relocation.
Sure.
That experience that he's being promoted and keep moving with his career, and I'm stuck. And I was stuck for almost 5 years.
Wow.
And while he's going and doing what he's doing, I am home with the kids. I love them, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And there was a lot of anger and victimhood internal conversation.
Sure.
While my husband was taking the guilt. So it took me more than those 5 years to tell him, you have to let go of being the one who's taking the blame. You have to let go of that role,
Yes.
because I am freeing you from that. But he took that on because there was a sense of, I took something for my wife.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not a good place to be in a
Right.
relationship. And I say, when couples go through a relocation together, they,
Yeah.
they stay through a lot,
Yeah.
because it's not easy and there are lots of emotions in that change. And one of the things I didn't know, and I think, if there are people who listen and go through any transition in their life that
Hmm.
I didn't know then and I learned later on, is that no matter if you go through a positive change or life transition, or less of a good change in your life, you experience emotions that are like grief.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
the reason is that grief is not about the person that dies. When we grieve who we are now without that person.
Mm.
And that's really the experience that we have. Think about it. I become a mother.
Yeah.
Who am I now after this change? I need to redefine myself.
Right.
When change
Right.
happens in organization, how this new technology, what we talked about, is going to change me,
The
right?
change. Right. Hmm.
Right? I'm being promoted from being a team member to a team leader. How these new relationships with my teammates is going to redefine me.
Right.
So there are a lot of emotions and thoughts that show up in that situation. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what happens in relocation,
Hmm.
because you were someone in the past, and where you are stuck is, who am I going to be now if I cannot be the past Noah? So I
Absolutely.
so I was stuck in the past and in the future, and I was not present. And that happens a lot in
Mm.
relocation experience, because there
I
is the
see.
past experience and who I'm going to be,
Yeah.
and there is no presence. You're not present with your children, you're not present with the people around you, with yourself.
Yeah. That is a very, very vivid explanation, Noah. I really appreciate that because in my mind's eye, as you were explaining that, I visualized you had one foot over here in the past, another foot over here in the future,
Yeah,
and you weren't embracing the presence, you
exactly.
know.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, it really seems like we've kind of trailed parallel lives, and the reason why I say that is because as you're explaining this, what's coming to my mind is what my wife and I have gone through over the past 5 years, as you said, five
Yeah.
years. I work for a global company,
Hmm.
and I'm here in North Dallas, but we're from Cincinnati, Ohio,
Mm.
and so 5 years ago, uh, when our headquarters was moving, um, that's when we had to make a decision. Are we going to move or are we going to stay? And my
Hmm.
wife was 23 years in education as a teacher and a principal, and so for her to give that up and to move here, with
Hmm.
me, you know. And she has never lived anywhere else in her life, born and raised in Cincinnati. And
Yeah.
like you, I'm of military parents and raising. I didn't serve, but both my parents were in the military. We lived on bases and everything, um, but I've lived in other places, so
Yeah.
this was no different for me.
Hmm.
So she had those inner struggles as well. You know, I need to redefine myself. I'm no longer a teacher or a principal. Who am I going to be? What opportunities are there for me? And she has her MBA, and she hardly got any looks,
Mm.
and I won't go into it in detail, but there's an episode where I'm actually interviewing her.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because now she is an independent professional mediator, and so
Yeah.
we talk about all that journey on that episode. But anyhow, my whole point behind that was, it's a lot of that's in parallel with what you were going through,
Yeah.
with your journey. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Now, another thing I want to just say, and when you did when you said this, it warmed my heart. I'm getting a little misty eyed here. It
Awesome.
warmed my heart, and here's it was two things you said. It really warmed my heart, Noah. The first thing was uh, the guilt that your husband felt, right? Because he felt as if he took something away from you, um, you know, as a result of making this move.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not good, but it warms my heart because a true husband, wants to protect his wife, wants his wife to be happy, and wants to give things, not take things away,
Yeah, it
right?
became our theme, happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. That's right. And I live by that every single day. So as a true husband and what a husband feels his job is, what he's compelled to do, that warms my heart. The other thing that warmed my heart was you mentioning to him specifically, I'm relieving you of this.
Yeah.
Don't, release that guilt.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's in spite of the anger and the self-doubt and I don't know, lack of worthiness that you felt at that time. In spite of all that, you you said, hey, don't feel guilty, I'm relieving you of that.
Yeah, and I will just add to that, to the partner, if anyone who listens to that and has to go through somewhat of experience like that first before, as I always say, no one dragged me in my hair and moved me from Israel to, it
Right.
was actually the decision when he had the offer, he came to me and he said, I know your career is very important to you.
Right.
I know it's important to you. So you will be the one making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be okay with anything you will choose. So that happened even before the move. And I decided that as a family, as a system, it's the right thing to move.
Mm.
Was it easy in the living? No,
Mm.
but it wasn't like a pressure that was on me that I can get in his way with his career or anything like that, or that if we don't go, it will impact our financial situation. So there was nothing like that. There was a full permission to say no, and I chose to say
Gotcha.
yes. And I was even the one that even kind of like cooking and giving him some suggestions
Mm-hmm.
about this
Mm-hmm.
relocation. But when it came, it was the wrong timing. So that's one thing, and I don't remember what was the other thing. So let's just move on.
Oh,
And
no, that's okay. If it comes up, please feel free to share.
yeah.
Yeah, love to
Uh,
hear your insights. All right, so
yeah,
let's.
yeah, I can. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
all
part of my brain. It always have ideas. Yeah.
right. No, that's quite all right. So, all right, so let's talk about the defining moment or moments of when you've had a discovery or a rediscovery of yourself in knowing that, hey, I can turn this around. Um, there is a path for me. There is a purpose for me. You
Hmm.
know, can you help explain for the listeners um, that moment when you realized in your heart of hearts, in your mind, that hey, I can turn this around. I've got what it takes.
Yeah, so first I remember what I wanted to say. So
Okay,
it is connected
good.
because it didn't happen this way. I
Mhm.
promised it will always be the other answer, not the one you expect me to answer. So it wasn't like I found that resourceful or that resourceful thing in me that I just knew that was, that eureka moment in me.
Right.
What happened was really a huge fail.
Mm.
A huge fail. I decided, you are in the human resources, I think so, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I am.
So I decided, because I wanted my past, I decided to go and test for a human resources certification, because my idea or my plan was that if I have that certification, the recruiters will look at me differently.
Okay.
So I set for a year after I had my third son in Brooklyn and studied. I don't think I really studied. I kind of sabotaged myself during that studies, and it's hard studies. I took courses.
Yeah.
I with NYU, and I took the first exam, and you know how hard this exam is, and I didn't pass it, and I decided to take it again. This is me. So I took the exam again, and I remember everything about that day. I went to that exam center, and I'm sitting the testing center, sitting there, taking the exam, seeing the result. And let's say, I don't remember how much the number you need, but let's say it's 400. I was 6 points from getting 6 points.
Oh my
From
God.
getting the 400.
Really?
That is painful.
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. And I remember myself just getting up, going outside in downtown Manhattan, midtown Manhattan, and calling my husband and telling him, I am done. I am done bumping my head in the wall and trying to get my past. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And I'm just surrendering. I'm surrendering.
I got you.
And that was the beginning of the change for me.
Nice.
I was not willing for almost 4 years to release my past. And that was the first time that I had to get that huge, to get into that defeat moment that I will say, I am ready to stop fighting.
Yes.
I'm ready to let go. And what I forgot to say about my husband, that the person that was giving me the power was him. He always believed in me. He always believed in me.
Wonderful.
And when
Wonderful.
every time I lost hope, he said, you keep going. You can do it. You will figure it out, because you always figure it out. That's the woman I know. I even have tears when I say it right now, because I was not able then to believe in myself. There was a mantra I was always telling myself, I will figure it out. It will be fine. And I lost it when I moved to the US.
Gotcha.
I lost it.
Gotcha.
So that day was the beginning of the change. And that's when I started to, one night, probably from a space of creative outlet, I decided to start a blog. And blogging then, it was, I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that, 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I decided to start a blog. So, some people, and blogging then was like podcasting today.
Yeah.
So since you're in the space of podcasting, and I work with some business owners, so I know that sometimes, launching a website, starting a blog, starting a podcast, it's that, it's so hard.
Yeah.
I can't do it. People will see me. It has to be perfect. And they don't move into the doing. It took me 10 minutes to launch that blog. I walked with fears for 4 years, not taking actions on so many things and sabotaging myself constantly. That blog took me, I'm not kidding, 10 minutes to launch.
So you were past that. You were past that fear, past that hesitation and doubt of it not being perfect, and just ready to say, let's just do it, right?
I don't have an explanation. I just know that probably what here is what I know now, okay?
Okay.
There were a lot of emotions and thoughts inside me. As you mentioned, that when we talked about change, right?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't realize that because I was a doer. I was focusing on doing,
Doing.
taking the
Yeah.
same actions that I took in my
Hmm.
past and always worked for me.
Hmm.
And suddenly I take the same actions, but there are thoughts in my head telling me that no one will hire me with my lousy English, that I'm not able to do that I'm a failure. Okay.
Mm.
So I'm walking with that, with a lot of emotions, with a lot of thoughts, and I don't pay attention to them. And that blog, I believe unconsciously, was understanding that I need an emotional outlet. I need a
Right.
space to
Hmm.
express everything that is happening to me. It was actually a very funny blog about being an Israeli mom in the US. So it was nothing like, you know, complicated. It was just
Right.
like, I'm having a 2 years old. I'm with him in this US experience.
Right.
And I have observations,
Yeah.
and people loved it. People started reaching out to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. So it's fair to say that this blog was a foundation and a potential springboard for speaking, um, authoring, further writing,
It
maybe
was
for other publications.
it was the seed, and I didn't know that. I
Great.
didn't. So here is what's interesting. I believe that when we go on a path, and
Hmm.
I see that road in the background, the road to rediscovery. I believe, and that was the releasing, right?
Yes.
I try to control my future. But
Yes.
the moment I just released it and I said, I'm going to have a third
Hmm.
child and I'm just going to leave. And that blog has no intention to become, there was no
Right.
intention. There was just a want probably to connect with myself. And through that, people start connecting with me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I was able to share my thoughts, my emotions, my experiences very openly, and learning what does it mean to be vulnerable.
Right.
And I didn't have any intention. There was no publication. There was no nothing. There
Right.
was just
An
joy.
outlet. Right.
For
Yeah.
the first time experiencing, it wasn't like I didn't experience joy. I would
Well,
experience
sure,
joy
sure.
crossed Brooklyn Bridge, my
Right.
favorite place in New York City.
Yeah.
And I love my kids, and my
Yeah.
husband
Right.
love coffee. But
Me
it
too.
but it was just the connection started. And what happens in change is that we isolate ourselves. See what happens now. We are in this COVID situation. What people
Right.
started doing at the beginning, they isolated themselves,
Yeah.
and that social isolation was hard on everyone, right? And now
Yes.
people try to figure out how we reconnect. But the
Yes.
first thing we do in change, we isolate ourselves, and that's what I did. I felt very lonely,
Hmm.
and blogging was the first time that I, through that inner connection,
Right.
people started connecting with me. And then
Hmm.
1 week,
Hmm.
women from different areas in the US, Israeli women,
Yeah.
reached out to me and said, how did you do that? We are so stuck with our lives.
Mm.
Can you coach us? Now they all called at the same week.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, what's going on
Wow.
here? And that's when you realize, after you just don't listen to anything, you realize that it's time for you to listen.
Yes. You're
So I,
connecting with people and you're building a community.
yeah.
And that
And
wasn't even the intent.
And I thought that coaching is a scam. I knew trading, I knew
So true.
consulting. What's this whole coaching? It's a scam,
Right.
probably. People want
Yeah.
to get money for nothing. But I
Uh-huh.
became curious. I learned, I did a research. I didn't coach those women,
Right.
but I went and I started training. And that's how I recreated my path. That's kind of like that rediscovery where it happened. The writing, wrote the coaching, and people, as what I when I said no, it wasn't me believing in myself or finding my purpose. And I see it sometimes, those situations with clients where they
Sure.
say, I was promoted to that because someone told me, and I was promoted to that because someone believed in me. So people believed in me. First, my husband, keep going. And then those readers. And then when I became more engaged with the community, people told me, "You're so funny and interesting. Where can we
Hmm.
see you speaking?" And again, that
Yes.
English is my second language voice came back. And I said,
Right.
"No, that's my second language. Come
A
on."
barrier.
They said,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah.
where can we see you speaking?"
Yeah.
And I listened. I said, "Okay, they see something in me. I know to do that. I did training and consult. I stood in front of. I never had the fear of public speaking.
Right. Right. It wasn't
Okay.
that. Yeah.
So I started doing that. I went back to do workshops and speaking to groups and grew bigger and bigger. And then, when you start speaking, people say, "Where is the book?"
That's right. That's the next. That is next for sure. Yeah.
So so that's how, again, they saw something in me, and then the book came. And the book really, and what I talk about is really what I call the being and the doing,
Yeah.
which those energies. And the doing is really, Noah, the doer that
Yeah.
was focusing on the actions. And
Yes.
the being is the mindset and the emotions. And
Gotcha.
yeah, and how we learn to bring them together.
What a tremendous journey. What a tremendous story. I know just connecting with people with just the intent of a creative outlet, right?
Mhm.
Observe, just documenting what you observe, recording what you observed, and people connecting with you as a result of it. And uh, wow, I mean, absolutely extraordinary. And so that uh, just springboards into all the great things that you're doing now, the services that you provide when it comes to speaking arrangements. You wrote the book,
Yeah.
and yeah, and coaching others. Now, uh, let's talk about just some of the coaching that you do. Uh,
Mhm.
you provide coaching for individuals as well as organizations. Is that right?
Yeah, I work a lot with executives and leaders.
Okay.
In organizations, they mostly will be leaders. In some of them are executives.
Right.
That's my sweet spots. But
Yeah.
sometimes there are emerging leaders. I love those young people now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
old suddenly,
I feel old.
yeah, suddenly you say, "Okay, oh my gosh, I have a child that will go to college soon." So I love those kids because it's just inspiring to work with them. I love them,
Yeah.
but I work a lot with executives,
Okay.
and it's really on those spots. What happens in leadership, which is really interesting, is exactly what I shared in the story.
Yeah.
We use actions that work for us,
Hmm.
but then we get into that place that we were promoted,
Hmm.
and the actions that worked until now don't work anymore.
No, they don't. Right.
And that feels very uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And the understanding that I need to use new actions because these old actions or strengths
Right.
don't work for me. So, for example, if my strength is problem solving,
Hmm.
it doesn't work when you go up the ladder because you have to be more strategic. So you still need
Okay.
to solve problems. But if this is your focus, you don't delegate, you don't coach your people to become independent,
Right.
and you talk all the time
Hmm.
and you don't listen, and it just gets in your way. It doesn't mean that
Right.
it's still, it needs to stay your strength, but it's
Right.
out of balance.
Mm.
And it has to change.
Hmm.
So in those moments, people realize that things don't work for them anymore, and what I need to do to change that, I will provide the results that I need to be a better self. So that's in organizations, and also I work with what I call social leaders. So the leaders that say, I I want to have this organization, and I want to create something that is bigger than that.
Right.
And that's where what I call dare to be, it's that's freaking me out. It's
Right.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and again, it's kind of like it's a new thing. I need to shine, or I need to take on actions or way of being that I'm not used to. So
Mm,
when I work with people, I tell them, I will not work with you on how to do leadership,
right.
because there is no recipe of how you do leadership.
Okay.
We will talk on how you're going to be a leader and what gets in your way with your being energy. What is
Mm,
the mindset that gets in your way? What are the emotions that gets in your way? And some people say, but executives don't like to talk about emotions. And I say, BS. Is that okay to
right.
say?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. I
I
agree, by the way.
so I will never ask you, Aubrey, how do you feel about that? That's not a conversation.
Right.
I will ask you, what are the emotions and the thoughts that got in your way when you got into a conflict with that person, or when you needed to give your direct report a feedback and you felt uncomfortable? What were the emotions and the thoughts there? And then you sit and you realize what happened there, because you
Right.
feel safe with me to say, well, I thought that person was a jerk, so I don't appreciate them. And then it's like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on. Or I feel they don't respect me, and I feel this and I feel that. And all the emotions and thoughts show up
Mm,
so easily.
I see.
And it feels safe. People don't like when they are being asked, how do you feel? Because it's out of context.
Right.
And
Right.
it's even intrusive in a way.
Yeah, which can result in a defensive response, I would imagine.
You know what? Mostly it will be beating yourself up. I don't know how to
Really.
feel. You know,
Hmm.
it's like those self-deprecation
Yeah.
conversation of,
Yeah.
I can't be a good client to
Yeah.
you. And I just take that away and I say, it's not going to serve you. So let's understand what that voice is telling you, because we need to know that mean voice.
Right.
But let's understand that it doesn't serve you, and let's learn how to lower that volume. But what happens when people hear those, when if you ask the wrong questions, people start beating themselves up, and that's
Right.
not helping them, right?
Yeah, it's counterproductive, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Wow. Noah, you have some tremendous insights when it comes to coaching.
Thank
Just, just empowering people with asking the right questions, allowing them to tap into their heart and deep within themselves
Yeah.
to identify with the emotions that they're feeling and reassuring them that they're in a safe place. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just some absolute brilliant and very strategic insights. So thank you so much for sharing those. I know the listeners would love to learn more about your coaching strategies and about how to overcome these emotions and how to get out of your own way when
Yeah.
these emotions cause barriers between you and reaching a goal. How can the listeners learn more about you, the wonderful work that you're doing, and maybe even purchase a copy of your book? How can
Of
they reach out and
course.
learn more? Yeah.
So my website is my first name and last name, Noah.
Okay.
And if you listen to it, it's Noa. Noa. There is no
No
age,
H.
no age, because
Noah.
in Hebrew,
Mhm.
Noah, Noa is a girl name.
Okay.
And Noah with the H, you pronounce Noach. And you don't have ch in English.
Okay.
So it's Noah,
Uh-huh.
Noa,
Uh-huh.
Ronen, Ronen Coaching, Noa Ronen Coaching.
Okay.
Probably you can see that with the podcast and everything, all the information.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or anywhere on the social media. I'm mostly you will see the best of me on LinkedIn, but anywhere you go on social media is Noah R. Coach, Noah R. Coach on all
Gotcha.
social media. And my book,
Okay.
just Google Noa Ronen. The book name is really cool. Beyond, of course, from the being, Beyond Leadership from Awareless to Awareness. So if you think about it, it's my
Awareness to
story,
awareness. Love it.
and the middle part is awareness.
Oh, we're mess. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. You know what? I was going to ask you something about that messy blog
Yeah.
and, and I guess there's some correlation there.
Yeah, of course.
Love it. Well, thank you for that information. We will definitely make sure that we have direct links to your website, how they can find your book, as well as your social mediums. We'll have those direct links in the episode show notes for our listeners. So
Thank you.
this has really been a treat, Noah. It really has. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and chat with us about your journey.
Thank you. I truly, truly appreciate, every time I tell this story, I learn something new about myself. It's like a therapy. So I thank you so much for allowing me to be on your wonderful podcast. So many great stories, very, very inspiring. And many times people don't say it. Thank you for delivering that to the world, the
Oh,
different stories. So thank you for that. Truly appreciate
oh.
being a guest on your podcast. Thank you.
Well, Noah, that is very touching. Thank you so much. I'm feeling and receiving it in such a good way. So thank you for that for sure. I truly appreciate it. It's just the least I can do. Everyone has a contribution that if they're not doing it, they should be doing it, but a contribution to make the world a better place. And so if I can provide an outlet for people who are making big changes and transformation in their lives and others, I'd love for having a platform to where they can share that story, such as yourself. So yes, thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciate it. So at this point, we are going to enter a segment I like to call Three for the Road. And in Three for the Road, Noah, I ask you three questions. They're three random, uh, yet thought-provoking questions
Oh, wow.
that I challenge my guests to answer in 5 words or less. So what do you think? You think you may be up for it?
Of course, I can't promise a lot, but let's try.
Okay, fantastic. And my questions are customized for my guests, so I don't ask the same
Oh,
questions.
self-made. Okay.
That's right, self-made. In fact, my questions for you are surrounding leaders.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So, for question number one, okay, I'm a big fan of metaphors.
Okay.
So, there may be a picture, there may be a piece of artwork
Hmm.
where metaphorically it represents a statement or a concept. Okay. I'm a big fan of metaphors. So, are you familiar with bowling? Bowling with the bowling ball and the
Yeah,
pins?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought
Okay.
it's a person. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So like there's 10 pins, right? And the pin in the front at the top, that's known as the lead pin or the head pin. So
Okay.
when you take that pyramid of pins with that lead pin or head pin, I mean, same thing. What metaphor or vision in your mind does this scene represent as a leader? That one lead head pin in front of all the other nine. What does that represent?
It has to, you said like limiting on words, right? Or not? 1 to 5 words?
1 to 5, but you know what? If my guests go over 5, I mean, there's no penalty because in a lot of cases they're saying something profound and thought provoking. So I just let you go if it's over 5. So don't feel forced at 5, I should say.
I would say vulnerable. What came
Hmm.
into mind is vulnerable.
Hmm.
It's there in the front,
Hmm.
can fall,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's also disappointing a lot of people.
Hmm.
So vulnerability, if it makes
Vulnerability. I love it. I love it. And you're right, because it's the most visible to any type of incoming um, chaos.
yeah.
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 Okay.
I'm keeping myself to the 5 words. I have a lot more to say, but I'm
No,
gonna keep it. I
no,
will manage myself.
no, you're doing great, Noah. You're doing fabulous, fabulous. All right. Number two,
Yeah.
fill in the blank. Leaders most care about
People.
people. Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, number 3. Name a historical figure that you feel who captures or captured the truest essence of coaching and leadership.
Of coaching or leadership? It's two different things. So I want to make sure.
Let's try one of each.
Oh my gosh. You're mean.
Okay, how about the easy one first between the two? I guess leadership.
So leadership, a lot of people say, so I'm not saying something new, is Moses. Moses from the
Yes.
Bible,
Yes.
one of the most impressive leaders, like me. He had problem with the speaking because he had some issues. He was stuttering
Right.
because of an accident. It's in the stories.
Right.
So and it was messy. He got in trouble with God. So I'm not going to go into religion and stuff, but Moses definitely, he represents a lot of the stuff I believe in. And wow, coaching. It's, you know what, I'm going to break the rules. My best coach was Sarah, the woman who brought me to the consulting agency.
Yeah.
She coached me. She coached me and she raised me. So I'm grateful for what she brought into my life. And I think one of the, I'm not saying 5 words, but who cares? I'm breaking the rules.
Who cares? You're on a great
That's
roll.
part of who I am. I'm breaking the rules. And by the way, if people take workshops with me, I always tell them, break the rules. It's more interesting when you do that. So
I love it.
So Sarah taught me. I was, again, 23, 24. She brought me to the dean of the Tel Aviv universities. It's the most important, one of the most important universities in Israel. So it's like someone will take me, I live now in North Carolina, to Duke and sit with me in the dean or president, she took me, I think it was a month after I started working, and she was sitting and it was kind of like the second pitch before she was already knowing that she will get the contract. And then she looks at me after talking to him and she says, Noa, is there anything you want to add? That's a real coach.
That is a real coach. Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling what you just explained in the words that she asked you. That is a real coach.
I see you equal. Yes. That's something that you don't see a lot. No. So it's something I learned from her. It's how you put your ego aside. Yes. So it's a different relationship when you put the ego aside. Of course. And that's what, for me, coaching is relationship.
Beautiful. Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
I broke the rules.
But in a good way. I mean, so profound. Thank you so much. I mean,
you for challenging me.
So that's it for 3 for the Road. You made it.
I made it. It was a fun ride.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was a fun ride for you. It was a fun ride for me as well. And I'm just going to remind all the listeners out there, please be sure to visit Noa's site at www.noaronencoaching.com and learn about her story, learn about her work, learn about her messy blog. And we'll have direct links to her book and her social mediums on the episode show notes for all of you as well. Noa, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so great to have you here.
Thank you.
Oh, of course. And thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. So if you know someone that you truly feel can value from this show and the message behind it, I humbly ask that you please share it with them. People going through dark times need to know two things. Number one, they are not alone. And number two, there is always hope around the corner. And also, please remember to subscribe to our mailing list on roadtorediscovery.com. That's road and the number 2, rediscovery.com. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Road to Rediscovery, it's a movement. It's a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.